which is, what is today's Republican Party? Joe? Well, hang on. It's an existential question, but it's also a practical one that's being debated on the air by Republicans. On the far right, you have people like Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz, and more to the middle, you have someone like New Hampshire Governor Chris Sununu. Gaetz recently offered his view in characterizing the candidacy of Tim Scott, the more mainstream Republican South Carolina senator who's running for president.
With Tim Scott, I think you have a candidate almost teleported from a different time, like a Herbert Walker Bush or a Bob Dole person. But the reality we live in today is that optimism is not coming to your rescue. And, smiles are not a substitute for success. And hope is not a strategy to ultimately prevail against the things in this town that are crushing our fellow Americans.
Basically saying he's done, that kind of Republican. And then on the other hand, you have Sununu, who said this about Donald Trump.
Donald Trump doesn't represent the Republican Party, right? He's the outsider. And we've kind of let him get away with kind of co-opting, I think, what are better traditional ideals of the Republican Party of limited government and local control. He wants to relitigate the past.
Joe Pinion, who's got a better argument?
I think they both have flawed arguments. I think the reality is that when you listen to Matt Gaetz, bless his heart, the notion that somehow Tim Scott is not conservative enough, is not America first enough, is not reflected in his voting record, certainly not reflected in his time from the State House all the way to becoming the only black man in the United States Senate on the Republican side of the aisle. So I could tell you which one of these things is unlike the other when it comes to his candidacy or his presence in the party, but I think Matt Gaetz didn't want to put his finger on that. I think as it relates to Chris Sununu, I think the other issue that we have to be talking about is that he's clearly shilling for a candidate. Everyone is shilling for candidates at this point, whether they acknowledge it or not. So look, the Republican Party is focused on America First policies. They're focused on trying to ensure that we're actually going to have local control, but they're also trying to focus on making sure that we're taking care of the concerns of the people right here at home.
The people right here at home. Trans people are right here at home. Black people live in this country. Women live in this country. Those are people right here at home that the Republican Party is clearly at war with. Gay people as well.
I think that's
I think the Republican Party is all about what do straight, white, cis men need. That is what they are about.
Right.
And they are leaving out a significant portion of the country in order to lure them in.
Is that what Tim Scott is saying, though?
I don't know what
the country
Tim Scott
is just
saying.
I think that's
We're
what
going to
you're
get to that. By the way, we're going to have a whole segment on Tim Scott.
I don't know. There's a whole lot of Republicans that I talk to on a daily basis that feel as if they're at war with Republicans.
But here's the thing, Joe. I guess what I'm asking is, I worry. Look, I've said this many times. I'm a political moderate, right? I like people who are political moderates on both sides of the aisle. I worry that the Republican Party is being pulled too far, meaning the difference with the Democrats versus the Republicans is the radical Democrats don't have the kind of power that the radical Republicans have in the actual Congress, meaning AOC is not going to get anything really done, meaning Cori Bush isn't going to convince the Democratic Party to change its platform. They'll speak for themselves. The right of the Republican Party, it seems to have more power in pulling them further. Do you disagree with that?
I would say that if you're talking about strictly from a D.C. Beltway standpoint, I would tend to agree with you. If you're talking about nationally, certainly at the state level, certainly if you look at what's happening in state houses all around this state and all around this country, I think that you would recognize that the left has become more extreme. I think to say that the right is completely off the rocker and somehow Democrats are having a sound, reasoned argument where people of sound minds can...
I'm just talking about the extremes. I was just talking about the power of the
But I don't think we even need to go to the extremes. You guys are talking about bathrooms. You're talking about woke. You're talking about you can't say gay in the classroom. We're talking about women cannot make choices for their own lives. These are extreme things that the majority of the country is against.
Respectfully,
and this is what you guys are talking about.
I don't know who you guys are, but that's your...
Republicans.
That is your characterization of a lot of things. You talked about a don't say gay bill that doesn't actually have the words don't say gay in it. And yet at the same time, as I've said, people, a fair assessment would be that the legislation was put forth in such a sloppy manner that you have people who are concerned that they could lose their job if they mention they went to the park with their partner over the weekend. That is a fair criticization. That's fair critique. It is not fair to say that Republicans writ large are out here trying to say that gay people cannot choose who they love, cannot live their life on their own terms. That is not a mainstream Republican point. That is not what many of the candidates who are running for president are articulating. But it is the type of fear-mongering that people claim only occurs on the right, but of course continuously gets a pass from civil society when it comes to people who are on the left.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.